All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started because we got quite a bit of material to get through. This one's going to cover, we did our introduction. Now we're just going through installing Python. So that'll be the first one here today. If you go through chapter 0 and go through the introduction, it kind of walks you through what is Python, how to work with the shell, getting things started. The only thing that we need to do out of here is get Python installed. And I, again, want to make sure that you guys are using idle for this course as opposed to mu. It does mention mu, but we want to use idle. So the easiest way to get the install is just go out to the Python downloads folder. We'll start 396. You can go ahead and download that. Run your installer. This will be the same whether you're doing Windows, Linux, Mac OS, etc. You want to have some form of Python installed. Make sure that you check this box down here at the bottom. This is the step that everybody misses. You'll run into some issues later in the course if you forget. So go ahead and click that checkbox and install now. It only takes a few minutes to get that set up and running. Yeah. On the path part, it typically will do that automatically sometimes on the Mac. Just make sure that when you run Python at the command prompt that it actually pulls up 396 and not 2.7 or an earlier version. So once you get everything installed, you can go ahead and hit close there. And then in your start menu, you'll tend to have idle. So if you just start typing idle, you'll end up with idle 3.9. Ignore this 3.8. That's an older version. We have 3.9 here. You'll click on idle. And this is going to bring up the editor that you're going to work in. Now, this first part that you start working in is going to be referred to as the interpreter shell. So anything we do inside this shell is going to be live. So we'll talk a little bit about what you can do, but 2 + 2, it's going to return 4. Everything you type in, and the moment you hit enter, it's going to immediately execute whatever's on that line. For your homework assignments, you'll go to File and New, and this is actually going to be the Python script. So this is where you'll actually do all of your homework, all your actual files for this course. Everything's going to be inside when you go to File New, and then you're going to save this document. Then you'll be able to end up running that document. We're going to go through a little bit of examples today. And once you run that, it's going to put the output over here on this interpreter shell. But when you guys are filling out your homework and such, don't do everything over here and then try to copy and paste it into this and submit it. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this document that's going to be on the left-hand side. All right. Anybody have any questions with idle? Again, we're going to go through it here in more depth in just a minute. All right, so back out in this section for this week is going to start with the basics. So again, I encourage you to go through, read all this information. I'm not going to cover every topic. I'm just going to cover the highlights that we need for the course itself. So the first thing it's going to talk about is that interactive shell that you're looking at. Again, that's this shell here. So you can enter in what we call expressions, and expressions are just going to be the most basic kind of programming instruction, and that's going to evaluate down. So reduce down, and you'll get an evaluation out of that. So for example, we talked about 2 + 2. That's an expression that evaluates down to 4. In that case, we have two values. 2 is a value. The plus sign is an operator, and then we're going to evaluate down to what it ends up equaling. So in a math sense of Python, this is how it will go down. This math operators table is going to be in order of highest to lowest precedence. You guys may also know this as the order of operations. So when you're doing math within Python, it follows the order of operations. If you do things in parentheses, just like Pendemus that we learned back in maths, when we were in grade school, high school, etc., it's going to do those in that order of operations. If you look over there to the left-hand side, the most common ones are going to be plus sign for addition, subtraction, multiplication is the asterisk. division sign, the backslash. Two of those is going to be a integer division. You'll also have the percent sign, which is modulus for remainder. And then you have the double asterisk, which is your exponent. And you can see in that table how that evaluates. Your homework assignment is going to ask for you to use at least a couple of these math operators out of here. So that means you need to do some form of addition, some form of subtraction, multiplication, division, whatever you want to do, it doesn't matter. It's going to ask that you use at least two different versions in here. Anybody have any questions over math operations? It's fairly straightforward. Okay. There's going to be a ton of different data types that we're going to learn in Python, but the most common basic ones are going to be integer, floating point, and data string types. Integers themselves are going to be whole numbers. So -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are all going to be integers. Floating points are typically going to have a decimal point that could be any one of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decimal points out. So -1.25, -1.0, -0.5. Note that -1.0 is different than -1. That .0 makes a difference. It becomes a floating point number at that point and not an integer. And then the primary data type that you guys will be working with are strings, and these are pretty basic. So these are going to be used in single quotes, and this is where you'll have letters. You can have numbers inside of there, but they're going to be strings. They're interpreted as like text in a sentence kind of thing. Anybody have any questions over those three data types? And you will use them extensively. Primarily strings. Now, when it comes to all these, you can convert a bunch of these in between. And we're going to talk about functions on how to convert from an integer to a floating point or a floating point to an integer. Strings are the most universal there is. So integers can become strings, floating points can become strings. Strings are obviously strings, but you can only convert some strings over to integers or floating points, depending on how they're set up. All right. When it comes to strings, if we want to add two strings together, so say we have the string of Alice and we have the string of Bob, and we want to put those together, we're going to use what's called string concatenation. And we're going to use the plus sign operator. This is not to be confused with the plus sign operator as a math operator. So in your homework assignment, if you say Alice plus Bob, that's not a math operator. That's string concatenation. Using the same symbol, but two different things. This will also be important on not only your homework, but the quiz and et cetera coming up in future weeks. So know the difference between those two. Same way with string replication. You will take a string and multiply it by a number, and then it will spit out the answer of that string multiplied 5 times. So for example, in string concatenation, if I have something like Alice over here and I say plus Bob, if I put those strings together, notice it puts it together. There's no space there. So if I want a space in there, I would have to have something like a string with Alice plus, and then an empty space plus Bob. Whoops, try that again here. Alice space Bob. Now I will get Alice space Bob. So you can add multiple of these things together, and that's how you get string concatenation. You're just going to concatenate everything together. If you guys are familiar with the old Excel concatenation, same concept. You're going to concatenate all this stuff together. When we do replication, this would allow us to do multiple of these. So if I say Alice multiply by 5, I'm going to get Alice put together 5 times. Where you guys would normally use this is you can use it for shorthand. So say I wanted to put a bunch of asterisks on the screen. Instead of me having to type out every single asterisk in a string and count 15 of these, what I could do is just have one asterisk, say times 15, and now I get 15 of those automatically showing up on the screen. So if I'm building out a menu system or a header or something, this can be a great way to shorthand that kind of thing. Plus, it makes sure that you have the exact amount that you're looking for there. What these will return is a string, right? So I got this string back, I got this string back, and this string back. Right now, those just spit it out on the screen and nothing happens because I'm using it in the live interpreter shell. If I'm using this over here in a homework assignment, such as this one over here, and say I do something like Alice plus Bob, right? And we run this file. When I run this file, notice that nothing gets output to the screen. And the reason for that is we didn't use a print command or anything else to do that. So we will talk about that here in a little bit, but know that when you do things over here in the interpreter shell, it's immediately going to execute and spit it to the screen. When you do it over here in your homework assignment, we have to print the result, which means if we do Alice plus Bob, we want to store that as some type of variable so that we can print that variable out to the screen, or we can store it, we can use it, we can manipulate it, and that's where we use the assignment operator. So if I say my value 1 equals Alice plus Bob, then when this script actually runs and executes, I'm still not going to get anything over here, but I've saved this value of value 1. And therefore I can use like a print function, value 1, to print that out. Now it's going to print it out on the screen. This is the part that most people get stuck with in Python when they first get started. So it's the reason I'm reiterating it as much as I am. So we're talking about being able to store values. We use assignment statements. So when we use an equal sign inside our script, this single equal sign is going to be an assignment operator. It's the equal sign. This is where you can store things. You can kind of think of a variable as like a box. We're going to store a variable to it. We can manipulate that variable. We can change the contents of that variable. But once it's initially established, it's there. This is a little bit different from you guys that are coming from something like C++ or some of the other languages where you have to establish that variable first, then you can assign something to it. You don't do that in Python. The moment you do this assignment operator or this assignment statement, it immediately creates that device. We don't have to tell it that it's a string or a integer like you would in other languages. In this one, it will automatically determine that based on what you set the assignment operator to. So by us saying Alice plus Bob, it knows it's going to be a string, and therefore value 1 is a string. If we want to know what that is, we can say print type, and we can say value 1. So type with value 1 inside the parentheses there is going to return what type of variable this is. So if I run this script, we'll see value, oops, it's value 1. You'll see that we got Alice Bob, and the class of this type is going to be a string. If we had a number or integer or floating point, we would get back different variables. As far as variable names, there are restrictions on variable names. So valid ones would be something like current underscore balance. We could use current with a capital B for the balance. We can use letters with a number. We can use an underscore then a number, but it cannot begin with a number. We can use all capitals, or we can use just all lowercase inside of here with no special characters. Most variable names that you're going to do are going to be just all lowercase with potentially a number, kind of like I had value 1 there. What you don't want to do is start it with the capital letter and then do the rest all in lowercase. It will work, but you'll run into issues down the road because it's going to potentially think it's a class. So follow this table in the naming convention. It can only be one word with no spaces. You can use letters, numbers, and an underscore, and it cannot begin with a number. Using this style here where you have current with a capital B is known as camel case. This is most common, where PEP 8 is usually going to want you to do underscores in between the side. So if you guys are going to use Python programming in the long term, do professional coding, you're going to want to use underscores in that side. All right. So we talked a little bit about being able to spit things out on the screen. That's where you're going to use that function of print. So that starts with print, and you put inside here whatever you want to print out to the end user. And you're going to use this a lot on the screen. You'll use it for interacting as your program. You're going to use it for figuring out what a variable is at any given time. You're going to use it to communicate to the end user. So use the print statement a lot. So if I say something like print, what is your name? Then when I run this script, notice that we still had the print statement up here. So we have Alice Bob, and then it's going to spit out to the user, what is your name? Now we can't type anything in. So to type something in, we're going to use the input function. And therefore, if we come back over here into our script, we now want to use the input function. When we use the input, we need to store that input so that we can save that later. So we're going to say my name equals input. Inside this input, you can ask your question here, or you can do a print statement before it, whichever method you like to use. If you use a print statement, it's going to return to the next line every single time. When you use an inline input statement, it's going to be inline. So the difference between that would be something like this. And then we're going to print that out again of the my name. So my name is, now here I'm going to use concatenation to concatenate my name back in. So we can say my name is, then we're going to add the my name. Everything we type in as an input is always a string. So if we want to use this as a number, say we ask my age, we got to convert it to a number if we're going to do some math with it. But to start, everything comes in as a string. So if I run this, you're going to see what is your name. The program stops at this point, waits for input from the user. When I type in Jason, it's going to store that variable. My name is now equal to Jason. Then it's going to say my name is, and then go ahead and print out our string. Everybody see that? Okay. Other functions that you're going to use right in the beginning is len. So len is going to calculate the length of whatever string that you have. So say I have this string here, and I say my output equals, and we're going to take this here where we calculated my name is, then we're going to tell it to just print my output. If I wanted to calculate the length of that output, I could stick my output in here. And this is going to return a number, so I could print that number inside of there. Notice how I'm nesting functions within functions. This is going to be pretty common when you start working with Python. So it's going to say, what is your name? I say Jason. It's going to spit back 16, calculating the entire length of whatever this output was. So this can be a great way for you to determine whether somebody typed in a name that was at least 8 characters, a password of 8 characters, whatever you're getting in from the user. If you want to calculate the length of their response, you could do that. Again, typically when you use length, you're going to store that. In this case, I just printed 16 out. I may want to store that. So if I say length equals len of output, now length is going to be equal to whatever that output was, and I can manipulate that as I see fit. So I could do something like length plus 10 is going to add 10 to whatever length was. I will need to do something like length equals length plus 10, right? So length is initially going to get set here as 16 if I use the name Jason. Then I want to add 10 to that. So I say new length, or length here, is equal to length plus 10. When this gets done, now length is going to be 26. So if I print length, we will see it's 26. I'm going to do that same command up here. This is my output. There you go. So the first time I printed length, it was 16. I decided to add 10 to it, and now I have 26. If I want to subtract, I can do a minus here. I can multiply by 10. So now when I run this, you can see I have 160 down there for the second one. Anybody have any questions over the print statement, input statement, or the link statement, or functions, I should say? Okay. The next three functions are going to be how you can convert things between different data types. So remember, we had data types of string, integer, and float. On the string, if you do str, then parentheses, whatever you put into that is going to return it out as a string. So you can then print that out. You can manipulate that however you see fit. You can change integers or strings over to integers by using the int function. This is how you can know that they typed in a valid number. So say I had something in my script that said, I'm going to take this back out. We have a name. We can say print, what is your age? My age equals input. And then we want to do something to that age. So we could say print your name plus 10 equals, right? And then to print that out, we just need to add whatever that is. So we would say my age plus 10. We're going to put that in parentheses so that it calculates that and then adds it in there. Now, when I run this, we're going to end up with an error. These red text over here is when you know you have errors within your script. And if you usually look at the very last line, it's going to tell you the problem. So I can only concatenate strings, not integers, into a string. So what this is saying is this is going to end up interpreting over to a integer. When I took in my age, it came in as a string. So in order for me to do math with it, I need to convert it over to an integer. So int my age plus 10. Now I'm going to get this back out as an integer. So everything inside of here is now going to take whatever age I did plus 10, and then it will concatenate it so that it can print it out. And we're going to purposely get another error. And so we get the same error, but notice that it is on the same line of when it's trying to come in. That's because this is now a number. I cannot concatenate a string and a number in order to print that statement out. I got to convert this whole thing now to a string so I can print that out. So run. And now it's going to say your name plus 10 equals 32. Does everybody kind of see everything that we did inside of here? Remember, you start with the innermost part. So this int my age is just going to take whatever age I typed in, attempt to convert it to an integer. It's going to then add 10, and then it's going to turn that whole thing into a string so that I can print that statement out. Now, if I type in something that's not a number, it's going to crash, and it's going to say invalid literal for int with base 10. Basically, that's saying I can't convert that over to an integer. Now, at this point in your homework and everything else, we assume that they're going to type in the age correctly. Later on, we'll know how to troubleshoot and basically validate whatever they type in as an actual number, and then we can spit them back to prompt in a new age if they don't type in a valid age. But for now, just assume that they're typing in what you ask them to type in. Anybody have any questions over those three functions? Okay, so that's going to start you in with your homework assignment. So when you start over here with assignment 1, what I recommend that you do is you highlight all of this and you copy and paste this into your document like this. At the very top, we need to put in those initial comments. So if you remember back out here in your main section of learning modules, you see this assignment section. Just copy and paste this in right here. At the very top, it should be at the top of any homework assignment you work on. Make sure you change this middle name to whatever your name is, not my name. So you change it to whatever it is. If I can type, there we go. This next section down here, notice that these hashtags at the very beginning are going to show these as comments. So we want to comment out this stuff that we paste in here so that it doesn't try to execute it. Again, these are known as comments. I recommend that you put these at the top of your homework assignment for each one of these so that you don't have to flip back and forth and figure out what you had to do. So now we know in this homework assignment, everything that's going to be required. So to get you started on your homework assignment, we need to get the first initial comments in. That is this right here. So done. You already got 1 point. The next one here is to use the print function to display a welcome of some point and prompt a question to a user. So we would say something like print, hello, and welcome to my program. Notice when I'm putting this string in here, I can either use double quotes or single quotes. It doesn't matter. Okay. So this is going to be prompting them with a welcome. Then I need to prompt a question to them. So I can say, what is your name? Now, that gets you those 2 points there. The next 2 points is using the input function and making sure that you store it as a variable called my input. If I specifically ask for a given name, which you'll see over here inside your homework assignment in this section, notice I bold and underline anything that is important. I also italicize things that are important when it comes to your homework assignment. So for this homework assignment, I'm not telling you exactly what you need to do. I'm saying right now, what is your name, blah, blah, blah. You can create whatever you want. I don't care. And the reason I do that on these homework assignments is it makes it a whole lot more user-friendly when you start getting deeper in your homework. You guys just have fun with it. Do whatever you want. So if you guys have silly prompts and all this and asking for cat names, or I don't care what it is, just create something. It's your script. Students tend to struggle with that in the beginning because they're not like, what do you want me to type? I want you to come up with it. And the reason I'm doing that is because when we get to your midterm project, I don't tell you what you want. You have to come up with your own midterm project. So the quicker you do that now, the better off you'll be. So I ask for your name, and I specifically say that it needs to be called my input. In Python, everything is case sensitive. So if I ask you to store it as my input, it must be specifically this. If you turn in a homework assignment that says my input with a lowercase I, it gets counted off. And the reason I do that is it's not the same thing. And it's going to matter on your homework assignments. It's going to matter on your midterm exams, everything in between. It's case sensitive. It looks like a typo. Python doesn't like typos. It's got to be exactly what it says it's going to be. So this first one, we need to specifically call it my input. And we can just store it as whatever we want. So input, and we can put that in there. Now, one thing I haven't showed you on input is you can have something in here if you want. Here, I'm going to do a greater than symbol and a space. And the reason I'm going to do that is in our project, it's going to give me something to type something into. So if I run this right now, see how it gives me that little arrow and then a cursor to prompt on? I know that it's waiting for input from me. If I don't do that, if I take out this inner prompt, then on the output to the user, it just sits at this point. You can do either one, but notice how the other one makes it a little more user-friendly. People seem to know that they're waiting for some kind of prompt. So I encourage you at the very minimum at all inputs, do a space with a greater than. You can put whatever you want here. If you want a $sign or a hashtag or whatever, doesn't matter. You can put whatever you want. Okay. So we're taking the input of whatever the user wants and we're storing it as my input. Now you have another 2 points. Then the next point is using the print function, print the contents of whatever my input was. So I don't want you to just say print my input like this. I want you to use it in some kind of sentence. So you're going to use some kind of string concatenation. So you can say you entered And then you're going to do string concatenation to take my input, concatenate it with you entered, so that when it prints it out to the user, it makes sense. There you go. What's your name? Jason. You entered in Jason. Anybody have any questions over that first part of the homework assignment? Okay. The last 4 points of the homework assignment, I'm going to leave up to you. It's asking that you use 2 different math operators from table 1-1 in your script. So you can use addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, whatever you want. The best way to do this, and you can do this however you want, but you can ask for their age, right? You take their age in, you convert it to an integer, you do something with their age, add 10, subtract 10, whatever you want to do, then print that back out to the user. This last one here is that you use string concatenation. You're going to use that by default just by doing your homework assignment. Where people tend to mess up on this one is they'll do something like print Alice times 5. Something like this. This is not multiplication. It's what? Nope. Not concatenation. It's what? The other one. Yep. Replication. This is string replication. This is string concatenation because I'm concatenating or putting together 2 strings. Replication means I'm repeating whatever's in this one 5 times or whatever I replicate it by. But this does not count as math operators. They're not math operators. I'm not doing anything with numbers at this point. Again, it's the #1 thing people mess up on this homework assignment. So you can take this program wherever you want. You can ask for a name. You can ask for their age. You could ask how many siblings they got, what's their grade in this class, whatever you want. Just kind of run with it. And trust me, the more elaborate you try to make this stuff and practice with it, the easier this course is going to be. So don't just do the bare minimum. Try to go a little bit more for your own sake. Otherwise, you're going to struggle start week 2, week 3 when we really start to build. Now, at the end of this, I'm going to save this file. This is going to be, in this case, I called it example1.py. When I come back over here to my Blackboard section, I click on assignment 1, and I'm going to browse local file and submit that .py file. Please do not submit this over here. This is not a Python script. This is the output of the idle shell. This is not what I'm looking for. Never fails, I get that on the first homework assignment. I get it. People are just getting used to it. So to have you not have to redo your homework assignment, this is the file I'm looking for. Anybody have any questions on the homework assignment? I know it seems rather basic, but it will build fast. So play with the print command, play with input command. You know, your next one here, you could call it my age. You can call it whatever you want. I don't care. You just have to use my input at least once. So I can have my age equals input. And here I could say, what is your age? Notice that I didn't put a print statement before that. I actually typed it directly in this prompt. If I do that, the difference is in your program, this one I printed before it and asked for an input. This one is in line. So now it's asking for an age. I can type in an age. Now, we're not doing anything with that age. Once we take it in, we would go ahead and manipulate that further. I'm not particular on spacing here, so you can have extra spaces in between that. Just make it comfortable so that you can read it. So for now, I would strongly suggest that you have each one of these on their own line. What I try to do is group things together that make sense. So like this intro welcome makes sense to group that together. Then I have my input, then I have my output of my print statement. So if we're going to manipulate something like my age, we could say age plus 10 is our new variable name, equals my age. Remember that we have to convert that to an integer, plus 10. So now my age plus 10 is a variable that we stored as a number. So if we want to print that out to the user, we need to make sure that it makes sense. So your age plus 10 is, now we need to print that out to the user and say string my age, my age plus 10, 10. There you go. Then we need the whole thing in there. So now when I run this, I have Jason, I have an age. Note that my age plus 10 is not defined. That means I didn't set it right. It's just age. There we go. You will see a lot of red text when you start playing with stuff. Use it. This is basically telling you where the error is. Unlike other programming languages that just say there's an issue. Python doesn't do that. It's not only telling me what's wrong, it also tells me what line number this is wrong on. So this is on line 24. If I come back over here, if I look down here at the very bottom, I see LN25. That means my cursor is currently on line 25. There's line 24 all the way up. So you can go look at your error over here, know specifically where that issue is at least what line, and why there is an issue there. So now if I run this, I have Jason down here to the end. And so your age plus 10 equals 32. Now, no, I put a space here. If you get something like this, where there's no space, you run it. See how it just kind of smashed it up there together? Add the extra space in. Practice on making sure your output is as clean as possible. This is still college, so spelling, grammar, punctuation, all of that matters in your programs. So don't submit something to me with lowercase letters that start your sentence and all of that. It's still college, guys. So spelling, punctuation, grammar, I will still count off for little things like that. It's annoying. You guys know better on how to do that stuff. Anybody have any questions on how homework assignments work? This is typically the way I'll do most of your homework assignments. I'll get you started and then you just have to finish it. Once you submit that homework assignment in here, again, homeworks are always due on Sunday of the week that it's presented. So this will be due this Sunday at midnight. If something comes up, you can't get to it, whatever it is, email me ahead of time. Do not wait till 11:50 on Sunday night, please. I am flexible with due dates as long as you communicate with me. If you abuse it, then I can't do nothing for you. Anybody got any questions on week one? Okay. Week two will get released on Sunday at midnight. So on week two, you're going to see flow control. This section will get released. You can read the chapter before we start class on Tuesday. And that way, when you come in and we start working on what is flow control, and then on Wednesday, we'll start in on the homework assignments. That's typically the way I do that in this class is day one, we go through all the material. The second time that we meet, which will be Thursday for us, we will actually start the homework assignments and any extra material that I need to cover that we didn't get done on the first day. For the first couple of weeks, there's like one homework assignment a week. Remember, there's only 4 homework assignments total in the class. So yes, the first couple ones hit, and then there's going to be some weeks where you don't have homework assignments. All right, stop this recording.